Hey, welcome back to We Be Kids again. If this is your first time at We Be Kids, know that there are over 60 different stories for you to check out over at the website. There's also over 250 activities that you can do to connect you with nature and boost your well-being. Just recently we've been working on our website and putting all of our favourite activities organised by season. And we've been working on autumn. And when we think about autumn, we think about Halloween. And in our autumn section, we have a story about a witch, we have a story about a goblin, and we also wanted to add a story about a wizard. So today, I'm going to tell you a story that is written by one of the UK's most loved authors, Enid Blyton. And the story is called The Fool and the Magician. And it can be found in this great little book that is called Tales of Tricks and Treats. Now, this story happened on an island called Ireland. And it happened a long time ago. And on this island there was a great king. He was called King Drew. And he had a loving wife. And together they had a young son, a prince. And King Drew and his wife, they were well loved and well respected by the people because they ruled very, very fairly. There was only one person who King Drew may have called his enemy, and that was a great magician called Yarny. And King Drew and the great magician, they had lots of history, and because of his dark magic, King Drew had told his soldiers to march the great wizard Yarny out of his kingdom. And Yarny now lived at the top of the misty mountains in a great castle. And one day, the king and the queen and their prince, they were out in the forest, and their son was playing. And when they called him to come back, he didn't return. And the people looked far and wide to find him, but he could not be found. Somebody had taken him. Now the king knew immediately who it would be, for with only one enemy, it had to be Yarny, the great wizard. So the king called all of his soldiers together, and he instructed them to take their horses and ride to the misty mountains to Yarny's castle. And that they did. And when they arrived at the great castle, they knocked on the castle doors, and Yarny appeared at one of the top towers. And they called up, they said, "Yarny, have you taken King Drew's son, the prince?" And the great wizard Yarny stroked his beard and nodded his head. He said, "I have taken King Drew's son. And how funny that he will grow up as a wizard's slave." Now the soldiers were getting ready just to charge, and they called out, "We insist that you return the prince." And the wizard said, "As much as I humour you, tell the king that I will give him a chance to win his prince back. If he can solve 3 riddles, I shall return the prince." So the soldier asked, "What are the 3 riddles?" And Yarny, the great wizard, said, "The first riddle that he must solve is to tell me the name of the bridge that has never been crossed by humans. The second riddle that he must solve is to show me an animal that has never seen the light of day. And the third riddle, he must tell me exactly what I am thinking at the very moment he sees me next." Now the soldier seemed worried. And just before he turned and left, Yarny, the great wizard, said, "And if he can solve all 3 riddles, not only will I return the prince, but I will disappear from the kingdom forever." With that, the soldiers turned and they rode their horses back to the great great kingdom of King Drew. When they got there, they told King Drew of the 3 riddles. So King Drew, first of all, sent his great horsemen out to find the bridge that had never been crossed. But they searched and searched and searched, but it couldn't be found. So King Drew brought together all of his wisest men, and together they pondered the 3 riddles, a bridge that had never been crossed by human feet, an animal that had never seen daylight, and the most difficult one, what was the wizard Yarny thinking? And for days and days and nights, together the wisest men tried to solve the riddles, but it couldn't be done. And the Queen was watching this. And the Queen knew that they had to take a different approach. If the wise men couldn't solve the riddles, then who could? And she called for the court jester, a man who was considered a fool by many, a man called Zany. And Zany came, and the Queen explained about the 3 riddles. And Zany thought for a moment, and he said, "Your Highness, I know the answer to all 3 riddles. I can save your son and have him returned to the kingdom." He said, "Bring me the king's horse, the king's robes and the king's crown, and I will ride up to the great wizard and solve the riddles and bring back your son." Now, when the Queen told the king this, the king thought it was the most ridiculous idea. How could the court fool possibly have solved these riddles when the wisest men couldn't? But the Queen insisted that he should be given a chance. And the king brought his horse and gave the fool his robes and put the crown on his head. With the soldiers behind him, the fool headed off to Yarny's great castle in the misty mountains. And when they arrived, Yarny saw them approaching, and he looked down and he saw what he thought was the king on the horse. And he went out and he said, "Oh, great King Drew, you have come to try and solve my riddles." And the fool underneath the king's gowns just nodded his head. And Yarny called out, "The first riddle. Name a bridge that has never been crossed by human feet." And from under his robe, the fool called out, "The bridge that has never been crossed by human feet is the bridge on your nose." Yarny began to laugh. He said, "You are not as much of a fool as I thought you were, great King Drew. Well done. Now, riddle 2. Show me an animal that has never seen the light of day." And the fool reached in below his robes, and there he pulled out a baby kitten that was only 5 days old. And he said, "This kitten is only 5 days old. Its eyes have never opened, for it won't see the light of day until its 12th day. So therefore, this animal has never seen the light of day." And Yarny began to laugh again, and he stroked his beard. He said, "That wasn't the answer that I was looking for, but it is correct. Well done. Though you think you're smart, you will never get the 3rd riddle. Old King Drew, what is it that I am thinking right now?" And from underneath the crown, the fool called out, "Right now, Yarny, the great wizard, you are thinking that I am the king." And the fool removed his robe and took off the crown and looked up and said, "And I am not. And Yanni looks shocked. How could the court fool know the answer to his 3 riddles? And even more, he'd solved them all. Not only did he have to return the prince, but he also had to leave the kingdom forever. The court, the castle gates opened. The young prince ran out, and with a clap of thunder, the wizard's castle began to crumble. A big cloud of dust came up, and when it finally cleared, the wizard was gone. And that is the end of the story. The Fool and the Magician. I hope you enjoyed that story. I really like it. I love stories that have riddles in. As a family, we love to do riddles, and we often sit around at night time and try little riddles out on each other. If you don't do that as a family, give it a go. You can find lots and lots of riddles. And if you're watching this alone, maybe try out this riddle on your children, or maybe try it out on your mum and dad as well. So we hope you enjoyed the story, and we'll see you again sometime soon. Bye.